Hello, guys. This is Red Wing Fan 1340 here. I'm pretty much here to. I want to talk about the trade deadline this year and what I think the Wings could do, what they possibly might do. It's right around the corner, not too far away. St. Louis has already made their big jump by acquiring Miller and Ott. Um, but the Red Wings themselves, they're in a position where they could get by if they don't do anything at all. They could also, they have options. They have options. They have players that they can go after, players that they can, that are expendable. Um, the biggest name that Detroit has been around during this trade deadline has been Alex Edler, which I think would be the most realistic option. Um, do we absolutely need him? I think yes. I think we could definitely use Edler. I don't like his contract, to be honest. I think he makes a little bit too much money. I think in this case you'd be paying him to kind of regain what he was in the past, rather than what he's doing now. I mean, right now he's definitely a solid defenseman. He would definitely play on our top pairing. A lot of people want a number one defenseman. Edler's not a number one, and a lot of people think that Cronwall's not a number one defenseman. But the thing is, Cronwall, for what you get with his offensive numbers and what he can do defensively, it makes him a number one. I mean, look at the company he's with offensively. He's around guys like Subban, Shattenkirk, who I think could be a number one in some places himself. Like I said, plus defensively, I think Cronwall is a number one defenseman. But I think the best scenario would be to find somebody you could pair with Cronwall, and I think Edler would be a very good guy. I mean he's Swedish nonetheless too. I mean that's already a perfect fit. But I think it'd be ideal to get Eriksson onto the second pairing and put him with Danny DeKeyser. I think that pairing would be absolutely brilliant. You have two guys that are just rocks defensively and don't really make a whole lot of mistakes, like two guys that could log big minutes. I mean, come on, DeKeyser and Eriksson. That sounds great on paper. Hopefully, it would work just as well as it would up here on the ice. Um, and I think if you got someone like Edler, I mean, they're not perfect defensively nonetheless. I mean, Edler hasn't had the greatest year this season, but I think you need somebody who can move the puck. We're kind of lacking in that department. We have a lot of guys that are supposed to be able to do that. Like I know Smith was advertised as an offensive defenseman, and he's just not. He's just somebody who likes to chip in and get caught pinching a lot. He's all right. I don't mind Smith that much. There was a lot of times like in the past where I'd call him a total bonehead for some of the mistakes he'd make, but he's gotten better. Kindle has taken a step back this season, and clearly his playing time has shown that because he's been in the press box more often than not, it seems, this season. And Lashoff, he's just going to be average at just about every aspect of the game. He's not going to give you much offensively whatsoever, but he's not really going to lose you a game either. So I think, a key thing would be to get somebody you could put with Cromwell so that you can have more flexibility for one, and two, it would just kind of solidify your defense a little more. They need somebody else. They do need one more piece. Oh, and I forgot about Kyle Quincy. That's right. Kyle Quincy actually hasn't been that bad the last month and a half or so, but that doesn't mean I want him back. To be honest, a month and a half doesn't take back what he's been the last couple seasons. He's been pretty terrible at times, and plus he makes a lot of money, 3.7 mil a season. I don't think there's a lot better ways you could spend that money. And you got to figure with this offseason, I mean, they have a chance to get rid of Quincy, Cleary, Samuelson, and Bertuzzi. I hope they get rid of all four of them, personally. I think a lot of people do, because that's a lot of freedom. You have a lot of space there that you could play with. I mean, could you imagine if we didn't already have $5 million tied up in Stephen Weiss? I mean, I like Stephen Weiss. I think he'll actually turn out to be a pretty good piece on this team. But right now, obviously, I sound like a crazy person because he's played about 27 games or so, and he has 4 points, and he's been injury prone. I don't know about that, but I think he'll be all right. I don't like the free agent options this year, but I think I'm looking at the trade market, seeing the names that are being thrown around. A lot of Canucks, a lot of Sabres. It's pretty much Canucks and Sabres. That's really what's out there. Um, Kessler is on the rumor mill. I don't think he'll get moved. That'd be pretty dumb of Vancouver to do that. But apparently he has a huge asking price. I heard from various Twitters that the asking price, if Detroit were to try and acquire him, would be like one of Nyquist, Tatar, or Yurko, plus a first, plus like an average NHL player, like an Advocator or something. And it kind of depends. It depends on the pieces you throw in there. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if you gave up like Tatar, a first, and like Almquist. I wouldn't mind that much. I mean, I wouldn't be like, yeah, that's a steal or anything like that, but it wouldn't be terrible. The only thing about Kessler is, I mean, do we really need another center? I don't think we do. I think we have like 7 as it is. We have Datsyuk, Zetterberg, Weiss, Helm, Sheahan, Glendening, and Anderson. That's 7 centers right there. And most of them are actually dressed. So, I mean, we're playing guys that play center on the wing. I mean, it's working. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but I don't think we really need another center. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. What are some other names that are out there? I'm trying to think. The Detroit has been kind of like acquiring, like rumors, anyways. I don't know if they're completely true or not. Ehrhoff's another one, but makes a ton of money himself. I don't know if we'd really go that route, but you got to figure if Zetterberg is on long-term injury reserve, we're gonna have the cap space for just about anybody. When you lose somebody who makes as much as Zetterberg and your star player, I mean it's gonna hurt. Trying to think. I was gonna talk about like the state of this team right now. It doesn't look like, judging by like their standings and the way they've played certain games and how they've closed games out, that this team isn't really that great. But they really are in a position to be very good in the future, like to actually be a contender in like not maybe 3 years or so, maybe even 2. It depends on how Ken Holland spends money this offseason. If he keeps guys like Cleary and Bertuzzi around, Samuelson's good as gone, or Quincy. They might not set themselves up for the future very well. But the thing is, it's a nice transition period because Datsyuk and Zetterberg both are at a level where they are still elite, maybe not elite, but definitely amongst the top centers in offensive production when they're healthy, and they can produce Selke quality defense too. While they're the whole package. They've always been. But what I'm trying to say is, we have these two producing at what they're capable of. Franzen having, I mean, he got hurt, but he was producing at like career numbers pace. And then you got these guys, like you got Nyquist, who I think will be a future 75-point player, which in Detroit that's like 90 points. I mean, come on, we've only had one 80-point player the last 4 or 5 seasons, and that was Zetterberg in 2011, who hit 80 on the dot. I mean, I think Nyquist will be a 75-point forward someday, but obviously he'll need to play with the right people. I think Tatar will be about a 55-60. He's just, I don't know what it is. He just doesn't have that consistency that I think Nyquist will have offensively. I'm looking at Riley Sheahan is probably honestly one of my favorite prospects. I couldn't believe it when he came up here and he started producing offensively, and I was like, this isn't a side of the game that I really thought he had. And he's just rock solid. Every part of his game is rock solid, and he has surprised me the most out of anybody on the team this year. It would really be a crime if he gets sent down this year. I hope he doesn't. If I were to pick one between Yurko and Sheahan, I would send Yurko down first. But that doesn't really say much because I really think Yurko has been just as good as well. When Yurko was drafted, we all thought he'd probably be like a Datsyuk Light or a Datsyuk Junior, even though he's taller than Datsyuk, I think. I think he's like 6'2" or 6'3" or something like that. Anyways, but I thought he was like this flashy player, and then he gets to the NHL, and you see him like just completely giving defenses nightmares. He just hounds defensemen on the forecheck, and he will strip the puck from just about anybody, which, I mean, that's Datsyuk-like, but it just wasn't a quality that I didn't really know about his game. I don't really get to watch Grand Rapids that often. I only got to see the Calder Cup Finals. I streamed that online. But, man, these guys, when you have guys like Tatar, Nyquist, Sheahan, and Yurko that are all reaching their potential, plus what you already have, this team is dangerous, more dangerous than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for, and I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the future.